Guys, good morning. For those of you in Cody, we're sorry to wake you up, but it's already 10:30 here. So we are live with Alex McKenzie from the Springfield Armory National Historic Site, and I'm trying very hard to remember the correct order that's going. We're going to talk about some historic arms and talk about the Armory a little bit here this morning for you guys. We're at the Baltimore Antique Arms Show out on the East Coast, and they're here. Harper's Ferry's got some people here. The NRA Museum is here, so lots of great historic stuff here. And Alex is going to run us through some of these really cool photos you see behind us. And so why don't you go ahead and run us through them?
Yeah, thanks. We're glad to be here. Glad to have the opportunity to talk a little bit and show you guys some of the stuff we have up at Springfield if you decide to come take a visit. What we have here is some of our archival material, some of the historic photos that really illustrate what went on at Springfield Armory from its inception, really. And those are really drawings because that was before photography in 1794, up through its closure in 1968. So what we have here is really a smattering of different time periods, and for the folks who know their firearms, you'll see some really interesting things in here. So first, really, we've got we'll start up here. This is a photo from the stocking shop about 1922 or so. Most often they'd be making model 1903 rifles. And you can actually see some of the standard 1903 rifles in the back that they're working on, and notice a lot of the guys are still working by hand, which is absolutely amazing. But the gentleman up here up front is holding a shorter C-stock, and that might be from the newly developed model 1922, or it might be one of the early versions of the sporters that the Armory was making at that time. Other things include great photos from training during World War II, where so many workers were coming in and almost had to learn their job from scratch, and the Armory had a great training department. Over here we've got World War II. The Armory won the Army Navy E Award, and this is an award ceremony in September 1942. Down here is a great picture. This is actually one of a series of a gentleman. This is Townsend Whalen. If people know the Wildcat rounds, they might know that name. But he is holding one of the developmental prototype M1 Garands. And this is actually before it became the M1. It was still in prototype phase. This is the T1. And they were actually, these are part of the collection at Springfield Armory, since the M1 was one of the things that they developed. And so you can come out our way, you can see a lot of those prototypes in addition to some of the photos like this. Other things are, the Armory had a small detachment of ordnance, and this is the ordnance crew in about 1920 or so. And a lot of these buildings are still there. We're actually rehabbing this building right now. Working with a college that actually owns it, but this is old officers' housing, and then of course we have to tie it to modern because we have this great photo. It's actually blocked in here, but he's got a modified M14, and of course one of the last products of Springfield Armory, and still in use by our military today.
So that was a really quick rundown of some of the stuff they got here. Some really cool photos, some really cool stuff, and I really like this picture of the Trials M1 because, as you guys know, we have the Winchester collection, and we have some cool Winchester Trials guns in our collection. We don't have any here with us, but they're back in Cody, but a very cool picture. And I don't know if you can see in the film, but you notice the very cool vented metal handguard up there on that particular example. It's pretty neat, pretty unusual gun. So, right before we went live, we had a lady stop by, as many of the show people have been stopping by to talk to us, and she stopped by to ask a question for Alex, and it was about the Model 1855 rifle musket and the Maynard tape priming system, and her question was, why didn't they keep that going through the Civil War? So, Alex, why don't you tell us a little bit about why they decided to switch back to the standard percussion caps?
Well, the Maynard tape primer was something that really looked good on paper, to the point where, if folks have seen a Model 1855 rifle or rifle musket or somewhere in that family, there's that little door and you get the roll of basically what's a roll of caps. So the idea was you could cock back the hammer and the roll of caps would advance, and then you'd have the weapon primed almost immediately. So there were challenges with that concept. One, if the paper got wet, then it might foul up your works, and you'd have trouble priming your weapon. But what really killed it was the onset of the Civil War. So in an effort to streamline manufacturing and really only make what they needed to, that's where the Maynard tape primers disappeared in favor of just going with straight percussion caps with the Model 1861. So all the small parts that made that roll of caps advance, they didn't need to make that anymore, and you can make muskets a little faster and in more volume. It saves some time and get more muskets into the hands of the troops.
Yeah, we were talking about it. It's a small part on the lock of a musket, but if you're trying to make a million guns, that small part adds up pretty quick. Yep. So yeah, it was a pretty interesting question we got right before we were live. So we're thankful we got some more material as we were talking. So we're going to take a little walk here and talk to Scott, who's over here, and he is a park ranger with Harper's Ferry National Park. So we'll walk over to their display just across the aisle here. If you like Scott.
And we actually have a Model 1855 in the rack, so you can do a zoom in on that lock that Alex was just talking about.
That's awesome. So walk this way and take a look at it. So as you can probably see in the background, and as we turn and walk, there's a ton of stuff here on display. We have artillery, there's Gatling guns, there's tables of all kinds of historic arms. People, very busy show, very active show, and just a lot of cool stuff to see here. So if you are in Baltimore or nearby, you can still come by and see us today and stop by and say hi. But we'll take a quick look at what Harper's Ferry's brought with them. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you have here, Scott, and what you brought along?
On our overall display, we have production examples of all the models that Harper's Ferry ever produced. So we only had a 61-year production history. We were kind of in harm's way during the course of the Civil War, and that ended our production history. We started out with our Model 1803 rifle, and then we work our way up to the Model 1855, which you may want to zoom in on, because this one actually has that Maynard tape primer system that Alex was talking about. So a roll of caps would have gone in there, and every time you advanced the hammer back to half cock, it would advance a new primer up over top of the cone. But you can see there's a lot more mechanism there than on just a standard production percussion lock. So that was why they went back to that simplification during the course of the war. The only pistol that we ever produced at Harper's Ferry was the 1805 pistol right here. We're at the Baltimore Arms Collectors Show, and they actually chose this as their logo. And a cross brace of the 1805 Harper's Ferries is the logo of the military police to this day. So all MPs wear a brace of 1805s on their sleeve.
Yeah, a pretty lasting legacy for a pistol that was not that widely produced.
Absolutely, absolutely. A little smaller, a little more graceful. Harper's Ferry was kind of into design. They got forced into production, but I think Springfield probably always pushed us there a little bit.
All right, I'm going to ask you a quick question about this. I noticed on the 1805 pistols, it's got this metal guide for the ramrod. Is that's a similar feature to the 1803 rifle? Is that a carryover from that?
Yes, the metal bolster under here and the tubes are pretty much the same as on the Model 1803 rifle.
Same little piece of design legacy from an earlier rifle. And so yesterday, while we were hanging out here at the show and talking, Scott told me a great story about a arms designer that's not that well known over here that they have a display about. So why don't you tell us a little bit about James Burton here?
This is James Henry Burton, and at Harper's Ferry he was our master armorer in the early 1850s. He was pretty young. He was only 26 years old when he got elevated to that position. Not that well known in firearms history, but probably should be a little better known for some of his innovations. We always talk about the mini ball, the conical bullet that was used during the American Civil War. Actually, it's a mispronunciation of Claude Minier, a French infantry captain's name. Americans aren't very good with foreign pronunciations sometimes. But Minier's design was actually different, and it had a few drawbacks. It was a two-piece bullet with a tapered plug that went into the back of it. James Henry Burton actually kept working on that design, and what we still call the mini ball is really the Burton bullet. It was Burton's modification of that design, where he eliminated that iron plug and put that huge cavern in the back that we're all familiar with. And as far as his history as a master armorer, he was a master armorer to 3 nations. So he was a master armorer for Harper's Ferry, the United States government, United States of America. He actually was demoted from that position for political reasons, and he decided that the demotion didn't sit well with him, so he quit. Went to work for the Ames Manufacturing Company, and from there was very quickly hired away by the sovereign England. And he ran set up their Enfield Armory, got them up to a point where they had 12,000 employees, produces 75,000 weapons a year, so he took the American manufacturing system to England. With the outbreak of hostilities between the states over here, he actually came back to his native state of Virginia, offered his services there, became a lieutenant colonel in the forces of Virginia, was rolled into Confederate service, and he became the superintendent of armories for the Confederate service. Was reunited with the equipment from Harper's Ferry when it was captured by Virginia militia and turned over to the Confederate forces, and used to set up the Richmond and Fayetteville armories there. So quite a history for a gentleman who's probably not as well known as maybe he should be.
Yeah, absolutely, and a guy that had influence on all the major aspects of the standard issue arms of the Civil War, and for both sides, and the foreign sales, and yeah, it's a really neat figure that not a lot of people know that much about. And I'm going to get this question in comments later, I know. So I don't know off the top of my head if he is related to Winchester's Frank Burton, who was working in the late 1800s and early 1900s, a very long run, a very long career, and a very extensive career as an arms designer himself, and I don't know if there's any connection there or not.
I have no answer for you on that one, so you're going to have to do the research and get back to us on that.
I'm going to have to go back to Cody and do some digging on that one, but we'll try and find an answer, and somebody will ask us. Well, hopefully not now that I've explained it, but we'll get an answer for you on that one. So a big thanks to Scott, park ranger at Harper's Ferry. A big thanks to Alex, curator of Springfield Armory, and a thanks for them to let us intrude on their show and do a Facebook Live. So hope you enjoyed it, guys. Come out and see us if you still have some time today and you're in the area, and if not, we'll see you sometime soon again on Facebook. So thanks for watching.